Good evening. Welcome to the Norwood Board of Selectmen's meeting for the 7th of April 2020. This evening, it's shortly after 6:30 in the evening. Prior to our meeting this evening, we are going to go into an executive session. According to the Attorney General's guidelines, we will be going under Purpose 3, which is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and I do. So with that, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
And I have a motion to go into executive and a second. Mr. Maloney.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Plasko.
Yes.
Mr. Hajar.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll be going into executive session, and our next scheduled appointment is at 7:15. So we hope to be back by that time. Thank you all. Good evening, and welcome back to the Norwood Board of Selectmen's meeting for the 7th of April 2020. We have been in an executive session discussing several issues relating to land properties, purpose number 3 under the Attorney General's guidelines. There's one announcement I'd like to make. We voted on a transfer of land known as the Saints Lots, also known as 84 Moss Street in Norwood. It was approved by town meeting some time ago. The only thing that was holding it up was a development plan that had to be put in place. We now have that development plan. We reviewed it. We are satisfied with it. There was a purchase and sales agreement put before us, and we have voted tonight unanimously to sign that purchase and sales agreement for property located at 84 Moore Street, also known as the Saints Lots. So with that said, I'd like to move on and open tonight's meeting with a pledge of allegiance to our flag, followed by a silent moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and please be seated. This evening, our first appointment was at 7:15. We're going to begin it now with it's a show cause hearing that has been continued from March 24th. The original hearing was opened in September of 2019, continued to March 24th, and we have a continuous date again tonight. Show cause Hibachi Steakhouse, Inc., doing business as Hibachi Steakhouse. The reason is for failing to provide the public with the services contemplated by the license. Hibachi Steakhouse closed in July of 2019. They've shut their doors, and the law requires that if they're not going to use that license, we have a right to take that back. And this evening, I believe we have on the line Attorney Jessica Daracian representing Hibachi Steakhouse. Good evening, Counsel.
Jessica, can you hear us?
So the acoustics are pretty terrible, but that being said, just give me direction. I can introduce myself or whatever it is that you need me to do. I heard the Pledge of Allegiance, but I heard the introduction of Hibachi Steakhouse, and that is about it. I wish I could tell you I heard more than that, but I unfortunately did not.
Actually, Jessica, you pretty much heard what you needed to hear. This is Tom, and the phone is near me. So we're ready to continue the show cause hearing now, and the chairman has asked if you have anything you would like to say by way of opening.
Well, first of all, I would like to say good evening to all the selectmen and Mr. Chairman as well, and I would like to thank you for accommodating the telephonic conference here tonight. I truly appreciate it. We're in unprecedented times, so as you can imagine, I truly appreciate it. So I would like to say that to open. With regard to the license, of course I'm leaving it up, I'll introduce myself just for, I don't know if it's being televised, but my name is Jessica Daracian on behalf of Hibachi Steakhouse, Mr. Lynn. I would say for tonight's purposes, I don't know if there was a summary of, when the license expired or whatnot, but what I would say tonight was I would humbly request a continuance at the board's discretion, of course, with regard to the liquor license. I would ask for, whatever the board, determines is the right amount of time for a continuance. As you're aware, we are in a pandemic. The economy is closed, obviously. Even before we started the pandemic here in Massachusetts and nationwide, and so it's been difficult to find either a buyer or a transferee, either or, given the situation, and it's not getting any easier, obviously. Based on the fact that the restaurants are closed, nobody's selling liquor. It's been very difficult to try to find an appropriate party to transfer a license to, and obviously for those reasons, again, humbly request a continuance at the board's discretion.
All right, Jessica, thank you. Son, did everyone hear that? We hear it okay? We're picking it up on NCM, all right, Brian? Okay. All right.
Like to repeat her proposal?
She's asking for additional, the applicant is asking for additional time under the circumstances, particularly given the extraordinary pandemic that we're facing now and the resultant depressing effect it's had on business in general.
And in case I missed it, would Jessica please, Attorney Durassi, please define what extra time is?
Did you hear that?
I did not. I'm sorry.
The chairman, I just sort of summarized things. I think everyone can hear you just fine, Attorney Durassi, and the chairman is asking what additional time you might have in mind.
So I would leave that to the board's discretion, obviously. We don't know where the pandemic is going. We don't know how long the restaurants are going to be closed down for. Obviously, I know Baker just passed the last order to sell liquor. However, generally speaking, given the circumstances of now and our situation in general, there's not many restaurants that are going to be looking for a liquor license at this point. So, it's hard. I would leave it up to the board's discretion, honestly. And, I'm hoping to be very transparent in the fact that, there's no given time frame that I can suggest. I would just leave it up to the board. I don't want to suggest a time that would be more than the board would want. Obviously, I would just leave it to the board's discretion.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Howard.
Mr. Howard.
Jessica, good evening.
Good evening.
My question for you is has your client hired a licensed broker as yet?
So my client has a broker for the license. However, we have not yet secured any type of party.
Okay.
Transfer it to.
Thank you.
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that we have a party that's interested, but at this point, we just don't. Unfortunately, don't have a party that's been interested. And
No, that's what I was concerned about. Was a broker involved in it as yet? So you said yes, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. Zagari.
Right, so just to follow up on,
Well, I can tell you that we're diligently trying with a broker to try to secure a party to transfer the license to.
Thank you, Jessica.
how long has
Thank you.
how long has the broker been involved? I mean, they've been closed since last August, so I'm curious as to when they hired the broker.
Counsel, the question is, how long has the broker been on board?
So the broker's been on board since probably the first hearing. So I think the broker was in. This is.
So we're going back to September.
We are. Well, yes, I agree with you there. We're still looking at September, and we're still agreed. But we have a broker, and we're trying to find a party to take the license. However, it's been very difficult given, there's several restaurants that have closed down, and people are, businesses are not looking to open right now. So, but I assure you, we are diligent in our fight to find a party, an appropriate party to obviously take a license, whether it be a transfer or a sale. this is not, nobody's looking to necessarily profit off of this. We're just looking for a party to transfer it to so that, obviously the license is not revoked.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from the board?
No, I'm just not inclined to give an extension. The 6 months was to be up for a hearing on March 24th. Anything having to do with the COVID-19 situation that the governor, I think it was March 10th, declared an emergency. We've really only lost 14 days. Has been no indication made that in the time previous to that, they had anyone looking at the license. I really don't see what there is to be gained by extending it. Personally, if I was to go for an extension, it would only be what I believe is 14 days that they lost from the epidemic being an emergency to the date that we had the hearing. So it would be from the date the governor declares the emergency over 14 days.
Comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I understand Mr. Plasko's point. I think, however, under the circumstances, it would be unwise of us to take any actions, any avoidable actions to hurt any of our local businesses. I would like to extend this for some period of time, thinking perhaps till June 30th, the end of the fiscal year. I don't know if that matters much. That's basically 2.5 months, and that supposedly gets us past the peak of this thing. It will get us, we hope anyway, into a season where economic activity has come back to perhaps 75 to 100% of
I feel
prior
the same
COVID.
way. I don't think anything is going to transpire out there in the business world between now and the end of this situation we're currently in, 45 days after it completes. So I personally do not have a problem with June 30th myself. Mr. Howard.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would suggest 90 days from tonight. That's what I'd like to see. To give a little leeway that we're at where we're at right now, and to give them time to try to get a viable buyer for it.
Mr. Jacques, comments?
So if I may, I think the concern is here, obviously, I think, we're in a state of emergency. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen in the future. So I appreciate any type of continuance that the board would, in their discretion would give my client. I think we're in difficult times, and I don't think that, obviously I agree, there's within for the foreseeable future through at least the May 4th date, I don't believe that we're going to have any type of buyer or a transferee to transfer the license to, because nobody is going to purchase or want to transfer a license or open a business at this point. So given any extension would be, my client would be very grateful for.
Mr. Jacques?
Well, I was just going to say, based on that discussion, I would move to close the hearing unless there are any more public comments.
Do we have to close, do we close the show cause hearing? And
We'll close the show cause hearing and open it to public. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to close the show cause hearing.
Yep.
And open it for public discussion, to which I see no public. So with that said, does anybody choose to make a motion?
Well, we have to vote on your
We'll
closing.
vote on that first, but are we prepared to make a vote?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, on the closing of the show cause, Mr. Maloney,
Aye.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Plasko,
Yes?
Mr. Hajar.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Recommendations from the board?
Under the, Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Under the circumstances with reference to COVID-19, I think we should make an exception to our policy of 6 months and extend this applicant to June 30th of this year. And I ask for a second.
Second?
Have a motion, and on the motion, sir?
Thank you. I just have to state that I disagree with it. I think we go out of our way to work with business and to be as accommodating as we can with businesses, and we don't want to hurt businesses, as Mr. Maloney said, but we're not hurting the business. They're already out of business. They've been out of business since last July. And they've had since last July, so they've had more than the 6 months that we extended. Plus, it's been a month since, almost a month, half a month since the hearing that we continued to tonight. And I just think enough time has been given and that we should be moving on and taking this license back.
I don't disagree with you, Dr. Glasgow, but these are extraordinary times, and I think it calls for extraordinary measures. So I personally would not have a problem with the June 30th, in agreeing with my other colleagues. Any comments from you, Mr. Hashat?
No, I'm clear with the June 30 date.
So we have a motion on the floor to extend until June 30th, the last day of the fiscal year, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well,
Unanimous. I'm sorry, 4-1.
4-1.
One opposed. So, council, you have until June 30th.
Okay, so I would just like to say I truly appreciate your time. I appreciate you accommodating the telephonic conference, and I appreciate the extension. And, you know, I obviously I understand the concerns of the board, and I will work towards getting the license transferred.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate all you've done also.
No, I truly, and I hope everybody stays safe, and I hope at the next date I'm able to be there physically, and we can all be in the same room physically together. So stay safe.
We all hope the same thing, Counselor. Stay
wishes to
safe.
your family.
Best wishes to your family.
Agreed. Thank you, and your families as well. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Take care.
Okay, our next item on the agenda this evening would be Chief William G. Brooks. He was going to be here to discuss what is currently going on in the Norwood Police Department, how they're handling the COVID-19 situation. Unfortunately, he had to cancel out this afternoon due to unforeseen circumstances, so he will not be with us. So that brings us up to our new business. The first on new business is a discussion on the town election. Mr. Glasgow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our meeting on March 24th, we voted to postpone the annual town election under authority provided by Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020. The Acts call for the board to set a new date, no less than June 30th, 2020. After consultation with local elected official, our town clerk, the chief operating officer, the general manager, at that meeting, you asked that I confer with those individuals. I've done that, and I know some other members have checked in as well. Based on that consultation, it is recommended that we set a new election date for the annual town election for Monday, June 8th, 2020. There was discussion of other dates, including other dates, including the 1st of the month, the 8th of the month, and conceivably later in the month. But the town clerk felt that the date she was most comfortable with and favored, after all considerations, was the 8th. And that was also taking into consideration holding, in all likelihood, a separate action by this board, annual town meeting no less than 2 weeks after the election, which would be Monday, June 22nd, 2020, and contemplating that we'd be able to complete that annual town meeting by June 30th. That all said, since then, just last Friday or so, the governor signed Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, which allows a change in the town meeting. Doesn't allow a change in any dates of the election.
Correct.
But it allows a date in town meeting that would allow, and maybe the manager could explain it better, but it would allow the town, if we don't have our annual town meeting that appropriates the budgets for the coming year, to operate on basically a 1/12 budget, continuing until we do approve a budget. If we took the leeway that bill now provides us on the annual town meeting, it's conceivable to hold, under the current law, to hold the annual town election as late as Monday, June 29th. However, after discussions with the town clerk as late as this afternoon, she still feels strongly that she would prefer if the board would strongly consider the June 8th date. So for discussion purpose, I'd recommend that we consider setting the postponed annual town meeting to June 8th, 2020.
That's Monday, June 8th. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Bajaj?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about the date, but I was more concerned last week when we were trying to schedule special town meeting and annual town meeting by the June 30th date. I think we need to avoid that last week of June because that's the July 4th week. That's where July 4th is. So if you think we're going to get people around that last week, it didn't matter if it's for an election, or a special town meeting or annual town meeting, I think we would have a tough time. So that's why I was concerned about the June 8th date, and then starting town meeting on June 22nd. You're really giving yourselves 2 days. I've never seen it done before that way in 2 days, but you never know what this town can do. That being said, I'm not sure why we wouldn't either delay the decision of the 8th, since we have ample time to decide that, to see where this virus is heading and whether we're going to have that curve going down or not, or at least put it more towards the middle, maybe the third week of June. I don't know why the town clerk is opposed to adjusting that date based on what's going on. Again, I don't think we need to vote on it tonight.
We can legally wait until 20 days prior, and then to be practical, because people have some logistical things to do a week or two before that.
Right.
So we could wait, but my personal opinion, if the law changes and we can, again, postpone the election, we can do that. But otherwise, the more time the public knows, the candidates know, the town clerk and the manager to handle the logistics, the better.
I also think it's frustrating for the candidates themselves, because they have not been able to get out there and partake in any political discussions with the voters. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Howard, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The way I see the date of June 8th is that that's, at this moment, a date certain for the election. But we're in this emergency, and we just don't know at this point. I mean, they're saying that this week and next week could be tough times for the state of Massachusetts for this emergency. So we just don't know. But on the other side of the coin is it's reasonable to throw a date out there that this would happen on for, as has just been mentioned, all the parties involved, especially the candidates. And for them to at least anticipate that this could happen on that date. But it's obvious to anyone that if this emergency continued on down the road into May, hopefully not, and to June, then that's not going to happen on that date. We all know that, but we have to do a little planning, and we can easily change it 2 or 3 weeks before that date if need be. And I'm certain that the legislature and our governor, who, by the way, I think our governor has done nothing less than a brilliant job thus far on this. I think he's been incredibly good at what he's been doing, very good. But I'm certain that these people would extend the date for the election if need be. But if it isn't needed, and most importantly, if it's safe to have the election, then we'll have it on June 8th. And that's my feeling why I say go for that date.
Well, I think we can learn something from what's happened over the last roughly 30 days since this all began. Nothing is etched in stone. Things are changing rapidly, day to day, almost hour to hour in some situations. So if we do lock into a particular date, say the 8th, for instance, there's no reason why if we get to that point, we realize we're not ready for it, we could not put it out again. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The two other things to take into consideration. When there is a vote to be taken, they will have the usual absentee ballots. But beyond the absentee ballots, going back to the primary, we had early voting here in the town hall. We are going to have early voting again, but not in person, by mail. You can be able to go onto the town's website and get an application for early ballot, or you could call the town clerk's office and tell them that you'd like to have a early ballot application sent out to you. You fill that out, you return it. They will send you a ballot. You can return that ballot as long as that ballot is received, assuming we do it June 8th, received on June 5th by 4 p.m., the prior Friday. Mr. Howard.
And just to continue on, anyone who has previously voted, those votes count. They cannot be changed. They legally have to be counted as they are today. So any of those people obviously will already be checked off on our records so that a second vote will not be allowed for anybody who has already voted. But their choice will be effective.
Again, the important thing to remember on early voting is it's not in person. It will be by mail only. And when all those ballots are taken in on the date of the election, then we'll go to the individual particular precincts to be counted, whether it's District 2, District 3, whatever it might be. So that's how they will be counted. Mr. Plasko?
Yeah, just whatever we get back to and choose a date or decide to delay on a date, or whatever the case may be, you're talking about kind of mechanisms for the election. I also want people, particularly the candidates, that are concerned whether the public's going to know when the election is. The law requires us to do quite a bit of, what's the word I want, outreach to the public to let them know what that date is. We'll be doing a reverse 911 call, posting it on our websites, and other manners of letting the public know when that election is. So this will probably be more aware,
Opportunities, yeah.
people will be more aware of this election than they've ever been.
I agree with that.
The manager.
Mr. Plasko? I'm sorry, Mr. Maloney?
Actually, I was going to, Mr. Chairman, I was going to, I'm fine with the June 8th date as well, but I would like to hear from the town manager from an operational standpoint and a public health standpoint.
So there's a couple things. A set date would be better for us for notification and for preparing and some of the logistics. We all realize we may have to move that date. We can sit here tonight and the board can say June 8th and everyone can think June 8th is a great date and that's the date I think is good and Mary Lou and the command team think that's good. It could be July 8th, it could be October 8th. We just don't know at this point.
Excuse me, unless they change the law,
Correct,
it
unless
has to
they
be June 30th.
Correct. So we don't know that that's going to be the date, but if we set it, at least we can get that out there, and it's easier to tell people this is the date, and then if it changes, we can tell them the date changes, as well as the notification. One other operational challenge we'll have, we think we've worked out a way to have, assuming we have an election on June 8th, sort of what we're calling a no-touch election. So for those folks who are going to have to come in person, because currently as the laws stand, we still have to allow people to come in and vote on Election Day, we think we can arrange the logistics in a way that you can come in, you'll be provided with some PPE, perhaps your own pen, go in and vote, and there should actually not be any need to have any contact between the staff that work the voting polls and folks coming in to vote. It's a huge logistical feat to be able to do that. We think we can make it happen. We've been able to move mountains in days, but having a date certain would at least let us reach out to some vendors where we need to procure some additional supplies and equipment and say, hey, if our goal is to make this happen, that's the date that it's going to happen. We would need to be ready a week or two ahead of time, but we think we've worked out a way to have what we're calling sort of a no-touch election.
I agree with all of that, and I think to set a date is important because now we have something we can focus on and govern ourselves accordingly to get to that point in time.
Absolutely.
So does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion that we reschedule postpone the annual town meeting until Monday, June 8th, 2000.
Town election.
Meeting or election?
Town election.
Town election.
Election, I'm sorry. Thank you
Second.
for the correction.
I have a motion to postpone the town election till June 8th. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
4-1. Mr. Hajar in the opposition. Moving right along, we're going to discuss the annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Plasko, you want to take that?
Mr. Chairman, tonight we presented a warrant for the annual town meeting. It's abbreviated as much as possible so that when we get to town meeting, hopefully we will just concentrate on the financial business of the town for the coming fiscal year, that we would hold any other matters for a special town meeting that won't affect us getting the town meeting hopefully closed before June 30th. This was gone over with the town clerk and the town accountant, so, as well as the general manager. So I recommend that we sign that, which sets the annual town meeting for May 11th, 2020, which is by charter. Yeah, and I might explain that because we, just like in the election, we're trying to push it back and avoid the current health situation. The Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 also gives authority to the moderator to postpone the town meeting up to 30 days. Been in consultation with the moderator, and once we set the election, he wanted to know what the election date was. I didn't mention that earlier. He will consider the dates, consult with the Board of Health, the police chief, and the Board of Selectmen, and come up with a date for which he will then likely postpone the town meeting, and probably, very well, because he can only do up to 30 days, announce that he's likely to do a second extension to get us to the date we want to have the town meeting.
Well, basically, we're in the same situation as how we are with the town election. We can set a date, but that date is not etched in stone, subject to
Well,
change.
this date is etched in stone, May 11th, by charter.
Correct, that part.
But we have a relief from that under the law, whereby the moderator has control to postpone the meeting. And well, he intends to do so after consultation with the parties I mentioned.
All right, thank you, but I think that was my meaning. So we have a motion
Motion to sign the warrant.
to sign the warrant, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Mr. Chair, if I could, what about the special town meeting? Are we just gonna wait on that?
Yeah, we have time. The manager and he can speak, have been talking about leaving that till the fall. But if there's things we need, we may need a special just to, again, deal with budget matters, the current fiscal year. I don't know if Mr. DeLuca can add any light, but I haven't heard anything yet that gives us any extension of dealing with this year's financial matters. So somehow, we might still need a town meeting just to finish that before June 30th. So the current recommendation is to keep things at a minimum, mostly financially driven, but if there's something else we think really should get on there, we have an opportunity to do that at that special, and we've got a few weeks before we have to deal with that closing.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, you want to follow up on that?
Just to Mr. Plasko's point, the goal for a special at this point, if we have one, would be just the internal transfers we're required to complete and an appropriation for emergency expenditures that we would need to do by the end of the year. And that's it, keeping with the theme of if we're going to have town meeting in June, and again, it's an if at this point, we can make that our assumption. We want the warrant to be as short as possible, because even if we're outside of the governor's restrictions on the number of people gathering, we would be just outside them, and the likelihood we're going to get 150 people into the room, and that's our minimum, because they haven't addressed the quorum, they haven't changed the quorum issue yet. That will be challenging. We would want to get in and get out and take up our further business in the fall.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the board?
Let's put that to a vote. Or did you?
We did,
Okay. No, sorry.
right, didn't we?
Yeah, we're all set. Thank you.
Okay, next up would be cemetery deeds for approval and signature.
So moved.
Second.
Second on that. I have a motion and a second to sign cemetery deeds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Number 4, for discussion. A, fire department fees. Let's start with that one first. Mr. Hajar.
In your packet is something that I did because I want to see where we stood compared to other towns, and lo and behold, we're in very good shape, which I think is great. And I believe the other towns that we surveyed were very appreciative of getting this information as well. A lot of them, or most of them, are well behind where we are. Two things that to me came out of the survey and I'd be interested if the town manager spoken to George about it, was there's a permit that I think should require a permit and a charge. All the other 16 towns that were surveyed require a permit and charge some fee. And the other is, was definitely interested in the chief's opinion on ticket books that allow the fire department to issue when vendors are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And a lot of that is a relationship that occurs between the building department and the fire department, because that's who the fire department would go to if they don't have those books. 11 of the towns surveyed have that book, and they like it a lot. So there is a process to get to that point, and one is we first have to adopt Mass General Law 40U. But again, this wasn't asked. I did tell George that this was several months ago that I want to do a survey to see where we stood on our fees. And as you can see, he provided all the information as well, and we are in very good shape.
Questions from the board? Mr. Howard?
Mr. Chair, first of all, my compliments. It is a very good survey, very comprehensive. Having said that, several of the, which, just for the public's information, there's probably 20, 30 or more different categories that have fees here. Several of the categories, in my opinion, now that I have this information in front of me, I see that the fees are substantially higher on a few of the cases, substantially higher, I say again, than any of these other towns. So having said that, I'm not looking to do anything tonight, but I think at a future date, we should discuss this to see if we want to lower any of the fees on this schedule.
Well, I wasn't looking to lower
I am.
them.
I am.
My intention was I want to make sure that we were above the average, and by this, we're well above.
We're above the average.
So let
We're
everybody
blowing
else,
it away.
let everybody else catch up to us. These fees have been in place for a few years, Alan, so now to go the opposite way, I would, it's gonna hurt ourselves.
What I'm saying is this. Fees are just another term under the category tax. And I don't want to embarrass us with numbers here, but I'd just like at a later date to have the board discuss these fees and see, after we can really absorb these, if they stand out, which ones they are, that are just way out there and way too high, in my opinion. So I'd just make a motion that you know, we, at a later date, we discuss these fees to see if we want to make any changes.
Mr. Manager, do you have something to add?
Just a couple of points. Our fire inspection fees and fire permit fees are higher than the average. One of the reasons is we do maintain a full-time inspector. It's currently Lieutenant John Cody. That position is paid at a captain's grade. It's not always the case in a lot of departments where they have a full-time inspector, even a community our size. We also have a deputy fire chief who spends a considerable amount of his time on building and plan review. So our fees are higher, but the staff resources we allocate to it are higher than most, heavier than most other towns. To Mr. Hajar's, Alan's right, it was great research, his point about what we would call a ticket book or adopting a local option that would allow the fire department to issue fines when there's a violation of the fire code instead of sort of pushing it over to the building inspector. The chief and I have discussed that. We're fine with that. It's another tool in our belt. To the specific point, we believe it should be held off, and further work on it should be held off until after the state of emergency, as the fire department's a little bit busy. But one of the reasons we have higher compliance and we haven't needed to do that is that we allocate a lot of resources to the inspections. One of the reasons we do that is historically as a mill town, it's always been more of a concern in a dense mill town than it is in a residential community that might be similar to our size and doesn't have it. So to Mr. Howell's point, the fees are high. I wouldn't recommend lowering them. The board is welcome to take that up at any time because we allocate more resources to it. As well, the local option for, we'd have to appoint a hearings officer, adopt a local option, and then we'd be able to issue tickets. Chief and I have talked about it. We're fine with it. We think it's a good idea. We just would like to wait until we're a few days past the state of emergency before taking it up.
Thank you. Counsel, do you have any opinions on whether that would require any town meeting action to
Well,
approve?
the acceptance of the statute requires town meeting action.
Right.
Once you accept the statute, then you can set the regulations.
Mr. Pasco?
So I'm not sure I heard everything you said. Is the chief in favor of the ticket book or not? Or yes, perhaps?
We feel it's another tool in it's another tool in our tool belt, so we think it's a good idea. We're more than okay with it. We just don't want to work on any of the administrative process right now, so we're just asking to delay any action on it. And I know it seems as simple as you get the town meeting statute, you order the ticket book, and you can start giving them. We are straight out through the will be through the end of the state of emergency, and probably for 30 to 60 days after that. So we're fine with it. We're in support of it. We think it's a good idea. We would just like to hold off until probably the fall before wrapping our heads around
Not
it.
so long ago that I can't remember, we thought we were low on our fees and asked the chief to review them, the department to review them, and they did, and they came up with the new fees. Turns out maybe they're a little higher than the other towns, but that's better than not collecting enough money. And it's not a tax if we use it to cover our costs of operation, which the man just mentioned. We have a full-time staff member that makes it kind of expensive and can be used for that purpose. So if the chief doesn't have a problem, then I wouldn't have a problem with the idea of the ticket book. But as was just said, we've got to go to town meeting anyhow. We're trying to delay these kind of things on town meeting at least till the fall, so that we only deal with real budget matters up front. So maybe we could table that at this time. As information, I mean, it is a good report, a great report, lots of information, probably a good recommendation, but we're just not in a timely position to really discuss that at this time. Wait till we're going into a town meeting.
Okay, with that said, I think Mr. Howard had a
Yeah, the
recommendation.
ticket deal, or whatever it is, permits, whatever they call it, or tickets, that's fine with me. But there's 6 or 8 of these fees out of this group that are 8, 10, 12 times what any other town is charging. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, I hear you, but we pay salaries from taxes. That's where we pay salaries from. You know, and I'm just asking, maybe like mid or late May, we put this on the agenda again to discuss it. 3 you do, 2 you don't. I understand.
Let me ask you this, would you be amenable to putting it off to the fall town meeting?
He's not talking
The
about
fees
town
are
meeting, it's just a
No, no.
discussion.
I know that.
No, that you can do on the ticket book whenever you want. But I'd like to see us discuss the fees, if we have a mind to change any of these. I mean,
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, that I would be in favor of lowering them, but having the discussion, I don't have a problem, so I'll second Mr. Howard's motion.
thank you.
Okay.
If we could make it like, say, the 3rd week, or the 3rd or 4th week in May at our meeting.
We'll leave it up to the administrative end to set a date
Thank you,
sometime in
Mr.
May.
Chair. Thank you.
Is that amenable to you, Mr. Ajat?
I brought this for information. I'm not opposed to
And you did a good
discussing anything.
job. You did a very good job. Thank you.
Mr. Maloney, you have something?
Just a question, Mr. Manager, how many complaints do you receive in a month of the fees we charge through the fire department?
I have received none, and
And
the
how
fire
long have
chief,
you been a town manager?
a little over 2 years. Chief Maurice has received none, and I don't believe Chief Greeley, prior
Thank
to
you.
him, did receive any.
Can I ask the manager a question? How many of these fees have you collected, Mr. Manager?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I personally don't collect the fees. We have a good separation of segregation of duties here, so I'm not personally collecting
rest my
the money.
case.
Okay, so we have a motion to put it off till sometime, a date be determined in the month of May for further discussion. Is that correct? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Number 2,
Well, just to
Yes, go ahead.
complete this, on as an article for special town meeting, can I just ask Christina, when we get to that point of discussing and scheduling, that we not forget this as an article, because the only way we're going to get the ticket books is to accept Chapter 40U first, And then there's a whole process afterwards in appointing someone, getting them trained, and buying the books and all the rest, so, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Secondly on your list is transient vendors, hawkers, and peddlers. There's a slight change to the application. Would you like to explain that?
Right, so when, actually this came about when Bill and I were reviewing the proposed liquor regulations. What I did is I looked at anything in the town that required fingerprinting. And although we've sort of abandoned the idea of having that fingerprinting as part of any liquor regulations, the town did accept, or, we've adopted Article 43 of our bylaws that states what vendors are required to have fingerprinting. And it does require vendors, hawkers, and peddlers. But in our current rules and regulations, it doesn't state that. So Christina was kind enough to call down to the Board of Health because they also had to make a change, and she did confirm that they had made the change to require fingerprinting in compliance with our bylaw. So I was just trying to make it clean for us to make sure that our rules and regs are up to date.
Well,
And
it's basically just a housekeeping.
just the housekeeping, yep.
Everything is already covered.
Everything's already passed, you guys have all done a great job, but we just need to have it in the rules and regs.
It is a duplication though, because it's already required by the Board of Health. The same people
No,
have to go to the Board of Health.
Yeah, but we have the rules and regs. No, they don't do,
Just a matter of adding
Yeah,
one
we-
line to
right.
specify
Well, one
particular
one
format.
correction up above and then the line 3 down below, okay?
right. So we're just adding Article 43 like we have Article 10 in there, and then stating what that is, that they have to comply.
Everybody understand that? Can I get a motion?
So moved, so that we adopt the updated rules and regs document for transient vendors, hawkers, and peddlers.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt the change to the application for transient vendors, hawkers, and peddlers. All in favor?
All right?
Opposed? Unanimous. That brings us up to number 5, Treasurer and Collector Mark Good submitting correspondence to us. I'm going to ask the manager to give us an update. We had prepared to vote on this tonight, but it's been a late change this afternoon, so it's something I think we'd like to look at before we take a vote on it. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is in relation to not charging interest on property tax payments that are due on May 1st. We've discussed that we do want to do it. The Division of Local Services just this afternoon sent out a circular talking about the notice requirements to do it, and they've changed substantially, and there was a cost to the way we do it before. We actually think those notice requirements are better. We just ask if the board will table it for a week so we can make sure we review them and make sure we're compliant with the requirement to get notice out in the appropriate manner.
Mr. Howard?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we support the treasurer's wish here.
Do I have a second on that?
Second,
Mr. Maloney has given us a second.
so that's ignoring the manager's comments?
Yeah, I was just asking to table it for 1 week. We
Oh,
just
you
want to
want
make sure
that?
we're, yeah, we just want to make sure we're aware of the notice
I had a
requirements.
question on that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I don't think we've decided it yet, but a discussion I had with the chairman earlier, there may not be a meeting next week. So if we cancel next week's meeting, did you just happen to state 1 week, or is that critical?
It's not critical, because remember, we're able to do it at any time. It's just before, once the board says yes, we have to get a notice out in a certain fashion, and we just want to make sure we're sure about that, so we don't run afoul of the law, because that could cause a problem with tax lien collections down the road. So if it happens to be 2 weeks, that's fine. We will not be charging interest on tax bills that are not paid as of May 1st, as of any of our other bills. We're able to do that. We just don't want to trigger the notice requirements until we're certain we can make them happen.
Thank you.
So you want to change that motion to a next available meeting, correct? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right?
Opposed, unanimous. That'll give us time to look that over. That brings us up to number 6. Resident of 22 Elliott Street submitting application to use the town common / gazebo for a wedding on Saturday, April 11th, 2020, from 2 p.m. and no later closing than 3 p.m. Attendance will be the bride, the groom, the person officiating, and 4 witnesses. That'll be a total of 7 people. They will govern themselves accordingly as far as social distancing. They had a wedding planned. One of the churches canceled their wedding. Not to get into specifics of it, because there's a personal reason why they want to get it done. The bride-to-be, the groom-to-be is in the United States military, soon to be deployed. So they would like to get married before he deploys. So
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all. Selectmen's schedule for next week, which is the 14th. We have nothing at this current time on the agenda for next week. And it was my requirement that maybe we want to cancel next week because I don't want to go looking for things to do. I don't want to bring this group together if we don't have to. So I would ask that we postpone it until the 21st, which is 2 weeks from tonight.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
on the motion, can we confer with the general manager? Does he have an opinion on the matter?
Just a thought for the board. We've discussed the possibility of doing virtual meetings. If the board wanted to try to meet next week where there's a light agenda, it might be a good dry run to see how that works when we don't have any scheduled public hearings.
Not only is it a light agenda, there is no agenda at this time.
I'm sure we could find something
But I
for
think
the
this would
agenda.
give us 2 weeks
do that on
to
the
come
21st.
together, work out some kind of a virtual meeting, and move on from there.
Okay, is the board interested in experimenting with a daytime meeting, given the current,
That's another thing that would be up for discussion within the next 2 weeks. We don't have to have a meeting at 7 o'clock at night.
Let's do it on the 21st. Whichever.
experiment
We
with
can
it?
get everything together between now and then, and I expect we can. But it doesn't have to be at 7 PM. It could be 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Fine.
I'm just throwing that out there. So I have a
Recommend
motion.
we schedule our next meeting for March 21st at 2 PM.
April 21st.
I'm sorry.
21st. You can have one at the
What month
21st.
am I in? April 21st. Thank you.
Look at you go.
I have a second on that?
Thanks for the correction.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. So we will have our next meeting on the 21st of April, 2020.
Mr. Manager, if we think we're going to try virtual instead of meeting in person, we can always have a trial run anytime,
That's a good point. We can do it. We've, as boards
especially
have
when we
been,
don't have anything to really discuss.
absolutely. As boards have been meeting digitally little by little, we're just trying to schedule that first trial run to make sure everyone has the technology and it works, so we can set that up.
Everyone good with that? Thank you all. Before I get into the next one, cemetery fees, I'd like to jump over to the one after that, which is Chief William G. Brooks III submitting his monthly report for perusal and acceptance by the board.
Information.
Second?
I have a motion for information and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. That brings us up to cemetery fees. Mr. Hajar?
Well, last August, I believe, we talked about this. We adopted updated rules and regs, and we were reviewing the cemetery fees in an effort to try to make the cemetery operation more self-sustaining than what it was. So we provided some history on what was going on with the finances of the cemetery, as well as completing a survey that was completed by Mark Ryan and Paul Vanali. And we gave ourselves 6 months, I guess, or whatever, sometime in March to look at it. So considering all that was going on, sort of pushed it off, and I just want to make sure that we don't forget it, because we do need to make sure that we're keeping up with the finance. I know it's tough times right now, but this is about not just today, it's about tomorrow, next year, and the year after, to try to, instead of trying to deal with this on a year-to-year, is to look down the road and say, okay, where do we want to be? And then slowly increase the prices so that we can make the cemetery operation more sustainable. So we gave this time for people to do whatever reading or research they want to do. So obviously, not tonight, but maybe the next meeting, it could be on the agenda for the
Let me
21st.
just say this, I could, and you're finished. I have no intention at this point in time, with all that's going on in the universe right now, with discussing cemetery fees of any manner, shape, or form, bringing them up or bringing them down. People are dying every single day. The numbers are getting more intense every single day. We haven't reached the peak. I think this is a terrible time. I practically call it immoral to start discussing issues about the possibility of raising cemetery fees. We have all we can do to survive in this country, And I don't want to have these people out there thinking that's all we care about is money and how can we make more money, charge more for funerals. People can't even grieve properly. They can't even bury their loved ones and grieve properly. So I have no way am I going to sit here tonight or stand here actually and discuss tonight, tomorrow night, next week, next month, until this is long gone, the pandemic, and we're back on our feet again. At that point in time, anything's open for discussion. But I think it's the wrong time right now to be discussing this. Any other comments?
Yes, I want to respond because I think you're taking this out of context.
No, I'm not taking
That
it
it wasn't
out.
me, wait a minute, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't me that postponed this from last August until this past March. It was
Right.
the board.
You're right.
So I'm just raising the issue that the time has come. If you want to delay it, that's fine too. No one is suggesting that we start the fees tomorrow or the next day. You can always, whenever it is, say, okay, effective whenever, down the road, 6 months or 8 months. And I wasn't suggesting that we even do it. I'm just saying that the time has come to rediscuss it. If we want to put it off another couple months, 3 months, that's fine. I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that we need to discuss it. At some point, finances are going to mean something to this town.
That's fine. But I'm not directing this towards you directly. But I think this is not the time to be talking about cemetery fees and raising fees. And again, it's not about anything that you had to say. I think this is the wrong time to bring it up. We'll bring it up in the future, my opinion. Anything further from the board?
Motion to table.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed, unanimous. And we've done the last item, which was memoranda on Chief Brooks. We've accepted that report. That brings us up to our own personal agendas, if you have one, Mr. Maloney.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple words. What I'd like to say is this. I had said previously how I thought that our governor has really been doing a pretty good job, in my opinion, on this. Likewise, I'd like to compliment our Board of Health especially, and our town manager, and all of our town employees. I think these people have really rallied to the cause. And I also think that the people of Norwood are abiding what they're, most of the people, almost all of them, are abiding by what they're supposed to do. So I only say to everybody now, we all know by now what we are supposed to do. So do your job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Plasko?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is kind of an awkward time also to bring this up probably just because of everything going on, but just the way things fall, the general manager's contract we need to address. It calls for us sitting down and talking with the manager about extending or not extending his contract by May 15th, and after that discussion, notifying him of our decision no later than June 15th. We've got a new board, an election, there's going to be another board. Everything that's going on now, it makes it kind of difficult to talk about dealing with. But I think we want to be in compliance with the contract. It seems we can either have a mutual agreement to do some kind of an extension of those deadlines, or this board can decide to deal with it, or if this board doesn't want to deal with it and prefer the new board to deal with it, we could kind of do a compromise and deal with it enough to possibly suggest to the manager a one-year extension, at which time, 6 months from now, the new board would have, the new members would have some time to have been working with the manager, and we can sit down and discuss the long-range future. But I'm not saying we have to decide that tonight, but before May 15th, you're going to need to schedule that we have that conversation and that we deal with that and think of what the different options are. So I just don't want to miss us doing what we need to by the contract.
Should we put it on the agenda for the 21st?
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? We'll nail it down. We'll
So
put it on the
moved.
agenda going forward to April 21st for discussion.
So
Everybody
moved.
comfortable with that?
Yes.
Mr. Hajar, do you have anything?
Well, two things. I want to wish everyone to stay safe, as my colleague Alan Howard stated. It's very important. The chairman stated earlier that these are really the toughest 2 weeks coming up as they're forecasting. So hopefully we'll all get through this safe and sound and healthy, and we'll be in better shape going forward. The other thing is I want to put the word out in case Tony isn't, is that our town employees need masks. So I know there are about 300 individuals in town making masks. My own sister, who's a fashion designer in the city of Boston, is making masks with a bunch of designers in town, and she's up to her eyeballs. She's got 700 that she's committed to getting out by the end of this week, going to hospitals and places across this country. I've asked her for some. I'm going to get some tomorrow, and I'm promised to get some every single day to help with this. But I'm asking the individuals who are making the masks in Norwood if they could help out, and keep in mind that our town employees need these masks, and it would be appreciative whatever they can get to. You can either drop them off to me or drop them off to Tony Mizuko at Town Hall, and I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. And just to touch on that quickly before I make my statement for the night, the manager will touch on that as an agenda. He's been working on that, and he has something he'd like to talk about in a very few minutes regarding the masks situation. My closing remark for the night is tomorrow night at sundown is the beginning of Passover holiday for the Jewish community. I'd just like to take an opportunity to, it's a very difficult time for all of us, but I want to wish them a safe, happy, and especially healthy Passover season beginning tomorrow night at sundown. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to the manager for his agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by thanking Mr. Howard for his compliments of the town staff. I can tell you I certainly have never been prouder of the folks that I work with. This is day 36 in a row for me, as well as for everyone on the command team and many of our other employees. We are working nonstop around the clock to provide the best services we can to the town. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the community for the support that they've shown. And collectively, we're grateful to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health who have taken a lead in letting staff do our job, as Mr. Howard said. So we're grateful for that. To start with some small announcements, I think as everyone is aware, due to the governor's order, until at least May 4th, Town Hall will remain closed to the public. We are available by phone, and we are available to have take care of any services you need. It's just taking us a little bit of time. We're all learning how to use the mail again. To that end, there's a new large mailbox outside the main entrance to Town Hall here where you can drop off, not payments, we have payment boxes at all of the doors and in the rear lobby, but any forms or applications or other paperwork you need to give to the town, we have a large box that we've added. The Civic and the library will remain closed until at least May 4th. Seasonal programming is likely to be affected by that. We don't know about summer camps yet. We don't know about the pools yet. We don't know yet about the Memorial Day and 4th of July parades. Depending on when society begins to open back up, some of those things may be delayed or they may end up being canceled. All the changes we've made at the Light Department, the Public Works Department, Police and Fire will remain in effect until at least May 4th, with the possibility that they continue on longer. And our current crew of skeleton crews here at Town Hall, with staff rotating in and out, will continue until at least May 4th. We've opened our Citizen Information Center Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. You can call and talk to a real person. As you know, that's always sort of been part of our business model here at Norwood, is you can call and talk to a real person. You can call and talk to a real person and get help with any issue you're facing, referrals to a number of services, assistance in understanding SNAP and unemployment benefits, questions about accessing town services, any other problems you're having, call us. We will take the name and number down. We will help you find a solution. We also have referral services to a number of mental health support services as well. 781-352-2363 is that number. Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, we have staff working. We've been able in a very short period of time to get this virtual call center up and running through the work of the Light Department and Kathy Carney in my office. It's all being done digitally. We have about a dozen employees working from home. They have cell phones and computers, and the system is able to ping one versus then the other, all done digitally so folks don't have to come in. So kudos to them. Call us with any problems you're having, any questions you have, anything you need to understand. We will help you. We will get an answer for you. Leaf pickup is ongoing. It will be slow, but we will get to leaf bags. The landfill is open for brush and compost only. We are looking at establishing a fund for assistance to augment some of our existing donation funds that we are able to provide assistance through. We hope to have more information on that in the next week. At 4 p.m. this coming Thursday, I'll be doing a Facebook Live session with some updates for residents and an opportunity for residents to ask questions in real time and hopefully get some answers in real time as well. So that'll be this coming Thursday at 4 p.m. I want to talk about two things before a final note. Is one of them, the community has been incredible in their response. To Mr. Hajar's point about masks, we are working with a vendor who will, within hopefully a week to 10 days, provide us with enough masks so that all of our employees can have multiple masks. The police department is already working with somebody. We're then looking to expand that. We need to get masks out to the seniors in the community. We need to then get masks to the housing authority, and then we need to have masks prepared for people to vote in June. So we're actually looking at quite a ramp-up operation where in a couple of weeks we might be able to have thousands of cloth masks, starting with our neediest populations and then going from there. The supply chain is a little funky on that, but we know we'll at least be able to have several hundred at a minimum and go into pretty rapid production there, working with a local company and able to help out a local company at the same time. One company that's been particularly helpful to the town in our time of need is MS Walker. They're producing these bottles of hand sanitizer. They are normally a liquor producer, so they do look like a liquor bottle. They have provided these to public safety agencies throughout the Commonwealth and the state police, but they have also provided us dozens of cases. We will not run out of hand sanitizer for our municipal operations and for our public safety because of their generosity. They have provided these all at no cost to the town, and we are grateful for it. Two other local companies in town that at this time have just asked to remain nameless because they don't want to be overwhelmed with calls, but they are able to produce face shields. Within 10 to 12 days, we'll have over 1,200 face shields. We've already begun receiving deliveries for them. We have them for our EMS staff, and we are sharing them with the hospital, and we're sharing them with the nursing homes. As everyone knows, we have 4 nursing homes and 2 assisted living facilities in town, as well as the hospital. It is not our responsibility to do that, but we take seriously our residents and those who we need in town, and we have been sharing resources, what little we have, with the nursing homes and with the hospital. It's very important to know these two companies have been donating that material. We've told them if you need to, we can buy it from you. They've been donating it, and we are providing those face shields for our staff in the EMS and at the hospital and the nursing homes. I want to be clear, that is not the federal government that is doing that. That is not the state government that is doing that. That is the town of Norwood, and we are taking care of our own. In particular, credit goes to Lieutenant John Cody in the fire department, Deputy Chief Dave Hayes, and Chief Maurice under his leadership, who have been making these arrangements with these businesses and working with them to get face shields, which are a critical piece of PPE, not only to all of our first responders, but to all of the nursing homes and the assisted living facilities and the hospital in town. So credit to Chief Maurice and his leadership team for what they've been able to do. It's nothing short of amazing. They've coordinated our hand sanitizer drops, and they are every day running PPE all around the community, making sure everyone has what they need with our medical facilities. So it's been nothing short of breathtaking to see what they've done, and kudos to the chief and his staff for being able to do that. The vendor that we're working with to ramp up mask production, to make hundreds of mask productions, the fire department had a role in that as well, as they were out today securing a number of materials from different areas, working with different vendors in town and coming up with surgical mask gear. They've just done a fantastic job, so kudos to Chief Maurice and his team. He also, I believe, is on day 36, although he never takes a day off anyway, so it's probably day 336 for Chief Maurice. Last but not least, I just want to remind everyone to please practice social distancing when outside your home. Limit trips to essential needs. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Try not to leave your house unless it's essential. Don't leave your house if you're sick. When using the fields or the track, please try to keep it to your household and be mindful of what we're trying to do here. We understand folks need to get out. We understand that there's a lot of challenges with folks in the community. We're seeing a rise in domestic violence. We're seeing a rise in mental health issues. We know that getting out is important for people, but please practice your social distancing and be cognizant of the whole community. We want to be able to keep as many services available for folks, and we want to keep these options for people, as we know a lot of folks are going through tough times. If you cannot leave your house and you're stuck and you have no other resources, call us at our call center, 781-352-2363. Please call us. We will find a way to get you the resources you need. We are not going to leave anyone behind. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
One question for me, and actually you can answer it very quickly. The helpline. We may not have the answer to the question, but we will find the answer and get back to the particular individual.
110%, that's what we're doing.
That's what I
we
wanted
want you to
to
be
know.
able to call a person and know somebody's working with you.
Any questions from the board?
If I could, recycling area, are we accepting the bulk items and those other things up there?
Not
still?
yet. We may look
Okay.
at expanding that, but for now, the landfill on Saturdays, it's just brush drop-off and compost pickup. And there's staff there, but we're asking that staff are not available to help you. Normally, sometimes they're up there helping you lug stuff off the truck or load it in. We're just trying to minimize the contact because we want to keep that surface open. And I'm glad Mr. Howard brought up that point. I know it may seem like leaf pickup is not a mission-critical function, during an emergency, but it actually is. I know everyone thinks we just offer it to be kind to the community, and while we like offering services that residents help, it's actually a critical infrastructure control measure. As leaves build up, they get into culverts, they get into storm drains. You have localized flooding that's called if we have a heavy rain. They end up catching fire in the summer when it's dry and there's too much brush around. Too much brush and grass buildup, as you know, also leads to more rodents, potentially more ticks. And when the winter comes and when you start having freezes, if you have culverts and storm drains with too many leaves in them, they start freezing up and they jamming, they cause pipe breaks. So it's a service we love offering to people, but it's an important infrastructure service. There's a lot of reasons why we try to get those leaves out and get them up to the landfill and why we do the pickup. So we are still going to continue to do those because it is critical to the community.
When do you take a breath?
Rarely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Happy Easter, Mr. Chairman. Happy Easter to everybody. Thank you.
Happy Passover, happy Easter.
I have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And again, we'll be back on the 21st of April, either virtually rather, or in person. But one way or another, we'll hopefully be back on the 21st of April. Thank you all.